So in this video, I'll be going through how I cut this out just using a jeweler saw and some basic rotary tools to clean it all up and polish it. And if you stay to the end of this video, I will be giving one of these away to one of you with your name on it. So stay tuned for that. Let's get started. So one of the first things you need for this, and how I made this extremely easy, is you need this name in a cursive font that is thick enough. You could just draw it out yourself or write it out yourself, but that's not really consistent, and most of us write pretty small and aren't really used to using something thick like a Sharpie to do something like this. So I found a way to do this on my computer using basically just the text tool and changing the font and moving stuff around a little bit. So very simple, but you're going to need to know, or at least have some knowledge of how to use a computer and Illustrator. But that leads perfectly into the sponsor of this video. So this video is actually sponsored by Skillshare. If you don't know where that is, Skillshare is a place where you can find tutorials or classes on a lot of different subjects, like computer stuff, like I was just saying with the Illustrator, or if you want to learn something like Inkscape, which is a free program. They're very similar. So that being said, I've taken some classes on there to get better at my Premiere Pro skills of making videos. There are also jewelry classes on here if you're looking for those, and you might even find one from me. So Skillshare is giving the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description or the pinned comment 2 free months of Skillshare Premium. This will give you access to their large collection of all kinds of different classes. So you can check out everything on Skillshare for free for 2 months. And then after that, you could join for as low as $10 per month if you get an annual subscription. So thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring another one of my videos, and let's get back to what we were doing. Alright, so making these patterns, or these names, are fairly simple for the most part. All you really need to do is use the text tool in Illustrator. And let's just put my name in. Scale it up a little bit. Alright, so from this, all you really need to do is go up to your characters, or your font, basically, and we need to select brush script standard medium. And it'll turn it into this. Even with it like this though, you can't cut this out because it's not connected here. You could technically just cut down and through like this, and it would be connected, but we want it to be actually how we're going to be cutting it. So what I'm going to do is double click on this so I have an ability to highlight it and highlight just the first letter. And with this right here, I'm going to change its spacing to -100. And you can see it moved over into the A right here. If I don't want it that much into it, I could just highlight it again and do -70, which is a better look. You can also make all the rest of this a little bit tighter so you don't have such small lines. So I'm going to do -50 for those. Now everything's more squished together and we have less thin lines connecting them. If you go too much though, if I actually select it, you can see that it starts poking through the other side of the letters, and you don't really want that. So let's see, I could do -70, and that seems to work the best. That's it. You're ready to go. If you wanted to turn this into a necklace, you would add a ring here and a ring here. You can just solder on 2 jump rings if you wanted to. Or if you want them just out of the same metal, you can use the circle tool and just place a circle here. And then I'm going to make a copy of that circle to use it as a cutting template. Like so. And then I'll move this a little bit. And then make a copy of it and place it over here. And now we have something that we can actually cut out and hang it instantly. It'd be pretty much done as soon as it's cut out and polished, of course. But you have no idea what size this is. It could be huge. So what I'm going to do is, if I can find the right tool, use my rectangle like I normally do, and just make a rectangle that just has an outer stroke to it, and then turn that stroke into as small as I can. And then with it selected like this, you can go up here and see how tall it is. I want this to only be 10 millimeters. So that's how tall. I don't care how wide it is. So, oh, and that's the other thing. These need to be grouped so they move together. So I'm going to take both of those and align them like this. They're basically centered and in the X and Y. And then I'm going to scale this down like so. And what I want is the 10 millimeters to be the R only. So I'm going to scale it up. So that should be the right size. This would be 10 millimeters tall. And then the rest of this would be smaller, obviously. So you can do that. Or you can use common female names like I was doing. And you can see the differences between each one. So it's going to be solely up to whatever name you're working with and whatever font. You don't have to use this font. You can use other cursive fonts as long as you can get them together and you're going to be able to actually solve them properly. That's the other big problem. So like this I, it's a floating object. This is all supposed to be one piece. You can't technically saw this out. So what we're going to do is saw up like this and then come up here and then kind of curve out and go around it and keep it as one piece. Alright, so let me print these out and I will show you how to go about cutting these out of metal with just using a saw and not having to use a laser like a lot of people think you have to do stuff like this. You can do it straight from this program. You just go to print and then you just go down here and print. And I'll be printing this onto label paper, so I could just peel it off and stick it. You can print it on normal paper and just use super glue and glue it to your work and do it the same way. Alright, so we're going to need a couple things to do this. Obviously, we're going to need some metal to cut out. I cut out these little sheets from a giant brass sheet that I have. These are 1.8 millimeters thick. You should use thicker, but if you're just wanting to practice or whatever, you can use this. And you probably can get away with these, but you're going to be able to bend them pretty easy. So use something a little bit thicker if you want something that's going to last a bit longer. So like this piece of silver that I have is 1.5 or 1.15 millimeters thick. And you can see there's a big difference between that. So here's a printout with all the names on it. This is a cheap set of diamond bits, so we can clean it all up because it's going to leave saw marks when we cut everything. We're going to need a jeweler's saw. You don't have to use a new concept one. You can use anything that works for you. You're going to need some sort of hammer. I'm just going to be using this one. And a center punch so we can start our holes for drilling. And I'm going to be using a set of files to clean stuff up after everything's done. This is some cut lube that just kind of clips into my table, but you can use different kinds. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to be using this setup for my cutting. Alright, so I've already cut out my name a bunch of times now, so I'm going to just cut out this one and show you how to deal with a problem that this one is going to have, or actually two problems. As you can see, I'm cutting pretty far away from it, and you actually want to do that when you're using this paper at least, because the adhesive isn't that strong. So if you cut right up to your pattern and then try cutting it, it will start picking up your pattern and dust gets underneath it, or sawdust, and then it becomes not sticky anymore and it starts falling off. So if you're using label paper, make sure you do that. Also make sure you cut an edge like this so you can easily peel it off, so you don't have to fiddle with the side of it. And let's put this on here. And as you can see, this piece of metal is much bigger than the pattern too, because we want something to actually be able to hold on to. Alright, so if you know anything about sawing stuff, or if you don't, when you saw things, or at least the inside of them, you need to drill a hole so you can fit your saw blade through. So to do that, I'm going to be using a center punch, and that's what the hammer is for. So for like the little ring holes that I put into it, I'll try to do this without covering everything up with my hands. Just hitting it makes that little tiny divot in there, and that makes it so much easier to drill holes, because your drill will want to walk around or scoot off to the side and mess up everything if it doesn't have a hole. Alright, so first problem. See this L? This is too small for me to drill it out, or basically it's too small for the drill bit that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to find the widest point in it and just mark it anyways. And I'm going to have to just basically drill through and cut everything out and make sure it looks nice. You could stretch this out in the program, but I'm just going to do it like this and play it by eye. So what I'm going to do now is drill all of these out. So what I'm going to do is use a high-speed drill bit on my flex shaft to drill through these. And I'm going to make sure that I do this on a wood surface or a surface that has holes in it. And when I do all the hammering to put everything in here, make sure you do it on an anvil or a hard surface. And if you do this on a hard surface, you're going to hit the hard surface and ruin your drill bit. Alright, so all of those are drilled out, and you can see everything on the back. Make sure that these are actually clear, because we have to put our blade through this. And that's another thing. Your blade has a thickness to it. You have to make sure that it's going to even fit through these holes. You can look up a blade sizing chart, or you can just kind of do it and figure it out, like I do. But for this metal, I'm going to be using a 3/0 blade, which is a 3 /0, and that's about it. Alright, so let's do this. You're going to want to not set your saw blade, at least for the first part of this, because we have to put it through here like I was saying before. And once you have it in there, you can reset your saw blade. So you could technically just drill these out. They are round, so just use a bigger drill bit and drill them out, or you could just saw them out like I do normally. Alright, so there we go, our first cut is done. You want to do all of your internal piercing cuts first, so you have all this material to work with, because if you cut this whole thing out first, it's going to be very weak, and you're not going to have a good time trying to cut these out. If you get snagged or anything, it's just going to bend everything out of shape. I also noticed right in here that I should put another hole in it, because cutting through here, it's going to weaken this whole piece, and all it's going to be connected is that tiny bit right there. So what I'm going to do is keep that connected, just come in and come out, but I'm going to put a hole there. Alright, we can continue with this now. Alright, when it comes to parts like this, I like to make sharp edges when it has them. So, like this top area up here, I'll probably round it. But these lower ones, I'm going to come down to them and make sharp edges. So let me show you the difference between how I do that. So for this, I'm just going to saw out a tiny bit because it's really close to the edge. And move my way up. And then as soon as I get to the top part right there, I'm going to turn this whole piece. And to do that, I'm just going to slowly move this up and down and turn everything. There we go. So now I can go all the way down. There we go. I went to the other side. So now I'm going to go back into my circle part, which completes that cut, and cut down to this one. Alright, so now that that one's down to there, I'm going to cut in from the middle part of what's left of the metal there, and come in and cut like that. And it should leave a sharp edge. And I'll do the same thing the other direction. Here we go. Let's see how it looks. You can see it's a little more sharper down here. I went a little too far on it, so you can see that little bit there, but I can clean this up a little bit more after we get everything cut out. So now I'm just going to cut this one out, the one I was talking about before that I had to add another hole for. Alright, we're at the L now, and this is the one that, like I said, it's very small, so I'm going to have to just make do with what I got to work with and make it look nice. So I drilled it out in the center because the L is technically thicker in the center and gets thinner as it goes to the edges. So if I drill in the center and cut out from it, it should look fine. Back, that the cut looks fine. Alright, so let's get some more cutting done. So there we go, all the piercing cuts are done. And like I said, with these outside ones, you could just drill a hole through them, or you don't even have to make them. You could just solder on jump rings. So, like these outside ones, like I said, you could just drill a hole that's big enough for those, or you could just solder on jump rings after you're done. That's what I basically did with the ones I made of this. Now we're going to do the fun part, which is cutting all the outside of it out. So for me, I'm just going to cut in from here, and then go along the bottom, work my way around, and work all the way back. And trying to keep everything in one piece. So if you ever get off track like that, see where my blade is right now? Right under the eye. You can back up a bit and then start your cut a little bit farther back and fix that problem. Alright, we've made it to the next trouble spot, which is the eye. So, watch carefully what I do here. I'm going to cut into it a little bit, and then back out. And then on the other side, I'm going to cut in also, and then go back with the base shape. Because if you just cut directly to it, it doesn't look right. And I'm going to take a one of the diamond bits and actually define that a little bit more. Alright, for these ones, because the E and the L are real close together, I'm just going to cut directly through and cut out that area inside and come back out. So right here, where I would have cut all the way through, I'm just going to cut down and leave a little divot there. Like that, and then come back. So down over here, there's a little nub from where the A kind of flips around. It's too small to leave. I could technically leave it, but it's going to cause a sharp point, and then any polishing is going to rip it off. So I'm just going to cut through it. These are all things that you're going to have to just kind of come up with on the fly, because designing on the computer does help a lot, but you run into these real problems. Alright, there we go. And I probably should have used more cut lube and wax during that, since I didn't use, I don't think, any, but it worked. So there we go. Look at the back of it. So these are a little thin from my cutouts, but I think they're going to be fine. And then you can see this is the material I have left. And like I said, making it as big as it is made it way easier to cut this out because it holds everything kind of in place. And as you can see, when I was doing everything, I was pushing real hard on this. You could see my nails changing colors with how much I'm pressing. So, like normal, and then pressing super hard. So, just make sure that it is as structurally sound as possible, I guess, or just supported everywhere. I normally use this little hole for it all, but this was a little too long and was hitting on stuff, so that was a problem. That's why I was using the middle one. So now there's two things you can do. You can burn this off with a torch, but that will anneal the metal and make this soft, and this is already really thin and delicate, so you don't want to do that. So you might be able to get away with that if you're using the super glue method and just lightly burn it off. But for this, I can peel it all off, or I can even use some. Oh, that's the other thing. You can use acetone on the super glue one, and it will strip it off. And I'm going to use some alcohol and soak this, and then strip it off. So I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit, so it'll start dissolving the paper and the glue. So now that this is all cut out, it's kind of sharp. And there's a lot of little defects in it. So let's see if we can actually show those on the camera without it being dumb and not zooming. Alright, so you can see the marks from the saw on the outside, which is fine. But there's a little bit of a burr on the top of this. If you rub your finger across it, you can actually feel. So I'm going to take all that down and take down anything I can really reach using my 220 grit sanding disc. So I'm just going to lay it flat here. So what I'm going to do is clean up the inside of this, and any parts of the outside I can actually reach. Alright, so now we need to switch this to a smaller one. And then, like I said, for the eyepiece, I'm going to go right here and just kind of cut into it a little bit more. Just so it has a little more definition. So there we go. Another thing you could do is cut a little bit of the top here for the eye, which I'm actually going to do. Alright, there we go. And now the eye actually has some definition on it. And most of this is all cleaned up. Okay, so now that that's all done, I'm going to clean it all up. This is a 400 grit. And be very careful doing this because you can bend this or you can fling it across the room. And this is a 600 grit. And some 1000 grit. Alright, so from this point you have a couple options. You can throw this into a tumbler, and if you did heat it up or anything like that, the tumbler will work harden it and it will clean it up a lot of the edges and stuff like that. So you don't have to be as detailed when cleaning everything up. But my tumbler is now out of commission, so I have to do everything by hand. You can also polish this using a polishing compound, which is what I'm going to do, which could completely ruin this. So we'll see what happens. Alright, so it's all nice and shiny now, but it needs to be cleaned off. I'm going to go do that real quick with just some hot soapy water, and be right back. So here we go. It's all cleaned up and nice and polished. And it's really as simple as that, but you do have to work on your sawing skills to get this down. You're going to probably want to make just single letters to start off, which would be a lot easier. This way you can get a feel for how everything goes. And if you're 100% new to sawing, this might be a little out of your league. You can still practice using, like I said, single letters. And bigger pieces are easier to cut than smaller stuff like this. Alright, so like I said at the beginning of the video, you can actually enter to win your own name cut into metal, and I'm actually going to use silver for yours, and a thicker silver than this, and it'll come with a silver chain. That being said, all you have to do to enter is go into the description or the pinned comment of this video, and you'll see a little sign up form. You just enter your email address and your name, and you are entered. So with that being said, the winner will be picked not on a certain date, but when this video hits 10,000 views. This can take years to happen, or it can take a couple days, depending on how much you're willing to help share the video. So, that's it. All you have to do is share the video and help me get to 10,000 views, and I will pick the winner as soon as we get to that, and you'll get an email, and I'll basically get your shipping info so I can ship out your custom made piece. So best of luck everyone, and let's see if we can get to 10,000. So that's it for this video. If you don't know about polishing or anything like that, I will put a video right here. And if you want more videos on techniques that I use, there's a playlist down here. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.